Yeah, I mean, how often do you hear in an interview process any questions about how good of a person you are, or how much integrity you have?
Well, there are
Or
questions you can ask. If you took the time, there are questions you can ask to sort of
they
get a
are,
sense of
but how
people's
often are they
character.
asked? You
They're
know,
not. They're not. They're not at all. And it's yeah. Yeah, I'm interested in what book of business you had before, and what sort of quota did you carry, and it's like, really, there's better questions to ask than that.
and I'm one that thinks, 20 years ago, if you lined up 10 random people and you asked them, what's your association with salesmen, 9 out of 10 probably would have a negative association. And today, maybe something similar.
Yeah, 11 out of 10 probably. Yeah.
11 out of 10, right? Part of that, I think, is that only 4% of universities offer a sales-oriented curriculum or sales classes dealing with sales, and 56 or 7% of people that graduate college end up in a sales job or enter the sales world. So there's not a lot of chances to glorify sales, to really teach the etiquette, to make sure that those first experiences with the SDR, BDR, or what have you, a startup enterprise salesman, are very pleasant. But do you agree that sales is moving in a positive direction in regards to it's progressively more important that you are a good person, that's a requirement?
Sadly, no. And I think we have the opportunity to. I mean, it's never too late, but it's certainly something I care deeply about. Actually, I've got a new book coming out in February, which is almost precisely about that point. No, because the technology sort of that has come into sales is the way it's used. It's used in a lazy fashion, by and large, by most companies. It's used as instruments of command and control and compliance, rather than how do we help these people become better. And we have this acknowledged, and people talk about it all the time. There's been research reports about it, that there's this vast disparity in the amount of coaching that sellers feel they need versus what they're getting, partially because we don't enable sales managers to know how to do it. We don't invest in sales managers enough. And so they resort to managing the way that they have, with the tools they have at hand, which is, what are your activity metrics, right? And as opposed to, let's really sit down. Let me as a manager really find out what's most important to you, and how can I help you achieve that. And so, I don't know if we're any worse off than we were, 10, 15 years ago, but it hasn't improved any. And I would make the case that perhaps it's gotten a little bit worse, where we're defaulting more towards sales behaviors that buyers are less comfortable with, or not comfortable with, and then also that sales behaviors that sellers aren't comfortable with. I mean, if there was a study that came out from uncrushed.org that talks about mental health issues in sales, and it's a study they did early this year. So it's still in the pandemic, but I don't think the results were purely attributable to the pandemic. And it was saying that 75% of sellers report being stressed or extremely stressed. I don't think that's all about meeting their numbers. I mean, certainly there's some of that, but I think it's just part of the job and the way they're being asked to do the job. And so we have to, I think one of the changes we can make is to change that perspective, that perception about what sales is, and get away from this idea that it's just, the stereotypical behaviors that you talk about, sort of the pushy, persuasive, overbearing, pitch first, ask questions later type salesperson, into something that's much more buyer focused or buyer aligned, let's say, that says, really our ability to sell something to another human being is first and foremost based on our ability to form some level of connection with them, that opens the door to us building credibility and trust, that opens the door to us asking the types of questions we need to ask to truly understand what is most important to them in terms of the problems they're trying to solve and the outcomes they're trying to achieve, which then opens the door to us giving them something of value that helps them make a decision. But if we don't do that first thing first, which is just essentially and only a human skill, making that connection, then our ability to do the rest is really hampered.
Yeah, I mean, how often do you hear in an interview process any questions about how good of a person you are, or how much integrity you have?
Well, there are questions you can ask if you took the time. There are questions you can ask to sort of get a sense of people's character.
Asked, you know?
They're not at all. And it's I'm interested in what book of business you had before, and what sort of quota did you carry, and it's like, really, there's better questions to ask than that.